Okay, hello again to another session of ZK Ask the Expert. I'm the presenter today, Robert, as usual during the last several sessions. Oh, here's the camera. Um, and today we talk about Spring Security. I think most of you know me, so I'll not introduce myself a lot. Just as always, I'm a support engineer at ZK for since last 7 years, almost 8 years now. And yeah, we always pick an interesting topic. Today we picked Spring Security. I just tried to walk over what are challenges with ZK and Spring Security, how to enable it by default, how to use the default, which settings don't work, which potential alternatives there are. I can't go, of course, into all the details of Spring Security because it's a massive topic. That's definitely something you should study offline because it's just a massive library with lots of integrations and even more plugins for all kinds of authentication mechanisms. Yeah, and why not just start? As always, I will have a quick rundown on the test application I prepared today. Because it's Spring, I used the Spring Boot as the basis for the project. And yeah, it's a normal Spring Boot application. We have our application base class, a few mappings, really just the basic things. The configuration is also just as plain as possible. I have my ZK homepage and the view resolver prefix that just defines that all my Zool files are below the web folder here. If I return a mapping from a controller, no, a view name, and then the view resolver will find it with the prefix .zool. So that's all been covered in previous sessions about Spring Boot and also in the documentation. So I hope this doesn't affect anyone. Besides that, Spring Security is of course also available without Spring Boot. You can just configure any web application to use Spring and then enable Spring Security and use Java config with almost the same annotations as a Spring Boot application. So there's no big difference. For me, Spring Boot is simple because I can test our integration layer with Spring Boot while doing these trainings, and right, it's an easy way to start an application from the developer environment, from the IDE. I think most of you maybe know already about this. So that's my application. I have a few pages. I have a login page, an index.zool, and a few pages that are specific to only logged in users. So not everyone can see these pages. So we are trying to protect our pages later. What I'm running this application with, it's a Gradle project, and I'm running this with Java 11 today. Can pick different versions. I think it also should work in Java 8. I'm not using any specific Java 11 language features, so it should also work in Java 8. Just haven't tried it, just because 11 is my default now. Okay, and I would like to start this this application without configuring any security. Just in side note, I also use my development config that I always use to disable all the caches, so I can change Zool files and resource files without reloading, without restarting the application server. And what we start with is, of course, our application, and we enable the default security configuration, which by default is not enabled, just commented out the annotation, and we just run it. And this configuration is activated by a Spring profile default login. I have other profiles for the internal login and for the external login. So you can just run different configurations while looking at the application, how it behaves. just close other tabs again. And yeah, we start with our default config. How it runs, I just run the main class. It's something, and somehow IntelliJ changed their run dialog. It looks a bit different. So excuse me if I'm sometimes looking for the fields. They somehow removed the field name, so it's not obvious which what each of the fields mean. It's a bit annoying, but well, I get used to it. So I run with Java 11. I activate the profile development and default login, and I'm running my application main class. And the working directory is just my current working directory. I forgot. Just look into the Gradle properties. So I'm using latest ZK version, latest stats version, latest JUnit version, the latest Spring Boot version, and the ZK Spring Boot auto configuration still works. So it doesn't need to be changed for the if you plan to upgrade to the latest Spring Boot. So it's unchanged so far. Yeah, just run it for now. Yes, of course. In order to activate Spring Security, no, we run without security first. So we just run our application, and we can see it's using the ZK version. It is activating my development configuration. It's complaining a bit about unsecured testing classes I'm using, which I'm intentionally doing here. And it enables the Spring Boot view resolver. Okay, and if we go to our main page, localhost 8080, it will display my page because right now the security is off. We can see that there is no security context right now, so it's just anonymous, it's empty. If I check for my user principal, it even fails. Why does it fail? Just show me why does it fail. Show user principal. It seems to be that even if I don't enable the web security, there is some auto config already enabled. So it's already blocking some requests. Okay, if I test AJAX, AJAX also fails. If I think if I click any kind of button, it will just be blocked. And I should be, but I can still go to all the pages of the application, even the admin page. I can just see it. So right now, parts of the application are not protected, other parts are open. Just some defaults that Spring comes with. So we just change this and configure this in the way we want it. I configure some login screen and just use just add this to our application. So what we do is we enable the web security. I don't know why it's enabled by default. Must be the auto config doing something automatically. But that's anyway what we want to do. We want the security and we want to protect pages. And what I say is I define some authorization rules. I say all the pages, all the MVC view names that match secure or everything below the secure folder needs the role user, and everything else needs an authenticated user. And I use the default form login. That's something that comes with Spring Security. It's just built in. If you don't know what it does, the documentation is quite good. You just open it and it shows what it does. You know, it says it will create the most basic configuration defaults to an automatically generated login page under the URL login, and these are the failure URLs. Just see, just try if this works. So we enabled this, compile with Control-Shift F9 here on my system, and rerun. Okay, of course, if I change the configuration, I want to change it. And in this scenario, I didn't use the Spring Boot developer tools, which automatically restart the context because it doesn't take a long time to restart anyway. How long does it take today? 10 seconds. No, not ideal. but CPU is busy. Okay, so we should see if we now try to open our page, it redirects to the default login provided by Spring. That's nothing, no code that I added, just automatically created. And now I have to log in. And in order to log in, I provided some mock user details service. In a real life, you will maybe have a database-driven user details service, or some LDAP server that provides these things, or something remote where you just provide the data and you don't even know this in your application. So it could be a single sign-on that provides this information. There's many ways to implement a user details service or separate this into authentication provider, authorization provider, to specify who's logged in and what roles they have. But here, just everything is in one class, the in-memory user details manager. And what it does is it creates in-memory users with username, passwords. You see, nothing is protected here. And each of them have different roles. For example, Robert is just authenticated. Hawk is a user, Matt is user and super user, and Gene is user, super user, and admin. Has all these roles. So I should be able to log in as Robert. Yeah, just log in Robert and then, oops, password test 1, 2, 3, 4, sign in. And now it says, hello, Robert. It tells me I don't have any authorities. That's the name for the roles they have. And it also gives me a bit more details about what my current security context contains. For example, you see a default property of the HTTP request, which is the user principal. Spring Security is filling this with their own implementation. They call it username password authentication token. I think that's coming from the from the form login. Make some noise. Yeah, and here we just see the session ID and my roles and whatever. So if I log in as someone else, just log out again. Are you sure you want to log out? Yes, log out. And I log in as Matt. Test 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see that Matt has more roles. Huh? He has the super user role user. Also here, you can see this in the different objects. So there are different objects you can use to access this kind of data. The current login or the current authentication and authorization status. And this works nicely as long as the page is currently rendered. So we see the initial rendering works. But for example, we have here a dynamic place where when I open this group box, it will try to render the contents dynamically. And if I try to do this, Spring Security says, ZKCE, I don't know about it, I just block it. So we need to do something else in order to allow ZK from functioning underneath the Spring Security. I don't even know exactly why it's blocking this request here, but it does, because I didn't configure any restrictions here. Must be another default about AJAX request. No, I think it's complaining about, yes, the first thing it's complaining about is the Csrf token. If we go to our default config, that's something we need to disable, because Spring Security has a built-in CS cross-site request forgery token, and this one doesn't work with the default Spring. We would have to customize the client engine on every request that's going from server to client, and set request headers, response headers, and pick up the data and send it back and forth. I think that's maybe worth investigating for the future. But right now we disable it because ZK still has some kind of built-in Csrf token, which is our desktop ID. So which is different for every page that's being rendered. So requests going via the AJAX channel use a different token for every page. And also you need to know the component IDs to send events to, and they are also following the desktop ID. And if these desktop IDs are not secure enough for your security needs, you can always implement a custom ID generator that creates more secure IDs if that's needed in your environment. But it's definitely something to look into the future. Right now we need to disable it, and we restart the server. And then we look into the page and see what the page does. Oh, 0 warnings. Interesting. Okay, reload. Is it still starting up? Yeah. Okay, and okay. I sign in as Matt. Test. Okay, and now my AJAX requests work because they're no longer blocked by the Csrf filter from Spring Boot. Need to be aware of this. This question comes a lot, or is posed quite often when starting with Spring Boot. Right now, we don't have a solution for this yet, but we have our own mechanism to ensure that you can't just forge any request to the server. You need to know the details of the on the server side. Yeah, these desktop ID. And without a valid desktop ID, a request will just be ignored at the server side. And now I can post my AJAX. I can render things dynamically, and ZK is mostly working. Yeah, so I already have something I can work with. Also, I'm logged in as a specific user, so I can access different pages that have a specific permission requirement. For example, super user page. Oh, no, I can do still everything because I haven't put any specific roles. So I can still access everything, even though I'm not admin. So we just customize the login a bit more. Also, we don't want the default login. We want our custom login. So maybe go to the next step. Just look into our index.zool. So what happens in the background here is my not so nice index.zool. So for example, what I'm outputting here with plain ZK is the execution user principal. Execution is the ZK wrapper around the request object, request and response object. So you see that the user principal is there. We saw it on the page. I can also see my current roles, which was, oops, I just sign in again as Hawk test 1, 2, 3, 4, which was this part up here. Now the username was output there. So I just put the principal name here. So these are already features you can use, and you can use these in any of the EL expressions to render information or to render stuff dynamically. But this will be easier with the ZK Spring Security module. So you don't have to write these long expressions everywhere. The dynamic creation, I used the group box just to show that I can also access these this information inside AJAX requests. So I use execution native request user principal in this case, or what is built in by Spring. So whenever you need some kind of dynamic whenever you need to evaluate the security context in Java code, you can go to the static method get context of security context holder. And when this one contains the information, because we are in a secured request response cycle, you can always read this information directly if needed dynamically inside and do some decisions in your Java code. That's also what's used by Spring to determine all the other annotations and method security layers and whatever you can use. Yeah, just showing different buttons, how they behave. They will become important later when we check if we have WebSockets or ServerPush running, that will be something different. So for example, if I try the AU, AJAX works. ServerPush, for example, will not work. Now it says null authentication because ServerPush is running in a different thread that is created by myself. So ZK is not aware of it. So the execution does not contain the user principal, and we will see how we fix this later. So this is just one of the challenges you will have when you try ServerPush. It won't work instantly. Another thing I would like always to mention is always use also the non-web features of Spring Security and enable your method security at your service layer, so that even if there's a security, not a security, if there's a configuration problem in your front-end layer, your database or your service methods are still protected by the required user roles. And I will see I always consider the UI more as the view. So you make things visible, you render things dynamically, but even if you render something incorrectly, it shouldn't be able to access the data. So it maybe renders null values or produces null pointer exceptions and does not disclose any sensitive data that needs a specific user authentication or user role. For example, I just made this just linked to a different example because I don't cover it today. We have in our zk-springsecurity demo, we already enable this at our security config. And in our service layer, we use pre-authorized. I think there are more annotations to make sure that this service layer method is only callable if you have the correct roles. And there are many more ways of protecting methods, and that's just one. So don't forget about this. Very important, but not the topic today. So what we did, we ran our application with the default login profile, and I demonstrated a few things that break, and now we will address them. First thing, of course, everyone wants their custom login page. And there are the two ways of doing this, or I say there are two ways. I think there's a third way where you don't control the login page at all. But this, I tried to show this today. What the single sign-on services I wanted to integrate are somehow in a weird state where they don't work with the current version. And the versions are too new, and I didn't find the right combinations of versions. A bit unfortunate, but these things happen if you prepare for a specific point in time. And I didn't want to demonstrate old versions. So, okay, so we have our internal login page. There are a few pros, a few cons. The pros is if you use your own login page, you can use ZK to render your login page. You can use ZK's widgets and component at server side. You have the styles already using the same theme as your application. You have a bit more flexibility where to place the login. Maybe you want to make this in a pop-up that opens dynamically and it's not on a separate page. The negative, the cons are, of course, if you want to render your login page with your ZK application, you have to allow that someone is rendering a page without being logged in. So you have to open up all the features you need for your login page, for example, AJAX or WebSockets or the commit, the ServerPush requests, or anything else. You have to make your resources, now the CSS files, JavaScript files, public. Luigi, you want to point out something? You can have more, the configuration is slightly more complicated and more things can go wrong because there's just more details. Okay, no problem. And that's something we can't solve. We always have redirection challenges because if an AJAX request redirects, we covered this last time, where the response handler just doesn't know what to do with an HTML page when it expects to see JSON data. And there are ways to deal with this. Just need to deal with it. So let's configure our internal login page. Where is it? Here. So we just pick a different profile. So this profile is active by our internal login. or int login profile. So we activate this configuration. The default configuration will be no longer active. Here I already prepared a bit more, just to show what kind of things you need to consider when presenting your own login page. For example, what I consider is ZKAU is a servlet for the AJAX requests. I have my Zool files in my Spring Boot application that's now Spring Boot specific. I don't want to allow direct access to my Zool files. I want to force people to go through the view resolver and the dispatcher servlet of Spring MVC. And I want to allow access to my static resources like JavaScript files, Zool files, CSS files, fonts, images, whatever your application needs to make public. I want to not have people sign in for it, so we can render our login page using the default styles. And we use the same kind of HTTP configuration. Oh, there's one thing I forgot, the remove desktop command. Sometimes you need to allow this because in certain scenarios you want to clean up. You don't want to destroy your session when someone signs out. I don't know if this is a valid case, but in case you need it, I just provided the pattern to detect what is the remove desktop command or request, so we can allow to destroy the desktops from not being signed in, because in certain single sign-on scenarios, you maybe want sometimes to keep the session or not in order to allow a single sign-on without logging out of your main application. Or maybe you want to do a redirect and then the remove desktop doesn't work anymore and you can't log out anymore, and then nothing gets cleaned up and you just have memory leaks in your session until the session times out. So this is a way to open this feature, just to allow the ZKAU request that has a specific pattern. Okay, so what we do is, again, we disable the cross-site request forgery. We have a more complicated authorization rules. For example, we say we deny all Zool files because we will only allow them through our MVC handlers, MVC mappers or mappings. We want to allow all the ZK static resources. We want to allow the remove desktop. That's a very special one. If you have Zets tests, Zets is not using the same get method, it's using post to send the remove desktop command. So we allow it in a very specific way here. So you can use a request matcher to check that a request contains a certain parameter and then also allow these kind of requests. It's a very specific thing. If you don't use that, you can just remove this. I don't need this. Of course, I want to allow my login, logout pages and in this case, I want to allow my root page to be available for everyone. And then everything below the secure folder should at least have user permissions, and specific pages, admin and super user page, need this specific role. And the configuration order matters, so this goes from top to bottom. The first thing that matches, I think, is being applied or denied. And then any other request should be authenticated. That's not covered yet. So you have everything else needs to be at least logged in. Then we configure our login page, this time a bit more in detail. We say the login page is rendered by the URL/login. The default success URL is just go to the main page. And the same with logout. We specify the logout endpoint and also the logout success URL. And then there's again something specific for ZK. I don't want my AJAX requests to be redirected in case they fail authentication. I want them to just output an HTTP error code 403, so I can do some error handling at client side and don't get redirected. And we had this topic last time with the SSO redirects. This is one way to cover this, to make sure that requests to ZKAU don't get redirected to a login page, because it doesn't make sense. Okay, otherwise application is the same. Just try to run it, see if it works. And for this, I implemented this login page. Now we see how the login form is created. By default, Spring expects the parameter name for the username to be username, and for the password, surprisingly, password. Of course, you can customize these, but I think the recommendation is to use these common names so that your browser can detect a login form properly and autofill and present the user with his with the, how to call these, password storage options, so that things can be discovered in the way the user expects it to be. I often hear people want to disable this, or if companies want to disable this, this is a fight you shouldn't fight, you shouldn't pick. Browsers are very strict in enforcing user preferences over what you configure. So whenever you say autocomplete false, browsers in most cases just ignore it, especially for login forms. So don't fight it. You will just break the user experience. Or maybe you found a solution, but I can't help you with these. It's just the way the experts recommend things right now. And password managers are arguably promoting stronger passwords, which is, I think, better than weak passwords. And then some error handling here. So if something goes wrong, I will just output the last exception, for example. If there's a last exception, I will just print the message in color red. And I have some quick login buttons. Okay, so if we now go to our page, localhost 8080 should be allowed because I put it into the allowed list. We saw this in our configuration here. Internal login form, the root is allowed for everyone, so I don't need to be logged in. What we can see is I'm currently anonymous. If I try to do anything fancy, I try to do AJAX, it's just blocked. Right now there's an error. It doesn't show the error anymore. I posted the bug already. It needs to be fixed in a ZK version. Right now, if there's an error happening, it just freezes like this. I'll show the error code, the error later. So what we need to do is we try to access a page that is requiring some user permissions, and it will automatically redirect to our custom login form. Here I have these quick logins, or I can just type it, just say I want to log in as Matt test 1 2 3 4 and log in, and I'm getting to the page that I requested previously. That's what Spring does by default. It caches the last unsuccessful request in the session and then redirects after a successful login to this page, to this request URL. And if we go back to our main page, we can also see the role super user. So we should see the super user page, which works. And the admin page should be permitted, should be forbidden, and it is. Now I also didn't put any error handling. It just displays the default white label error page. This is something you can customize with Spring Boot features or with the ZK error handler in WebXML. Just configure an error handler for the code 403. That's a standard servlet feature. And now also my AJAX request will work. ZKAU shows my on-click coming from the server. My ServerPush should still work. No, it should still fail because I haven't enabled the feature yet. But otherwise, my AJAX requests just display the data. And of course, Spring security features should fail because I haven't added the dependency yet. So that's my internal login. What else can we say about this? There's a question. Okay. Any timelines for the freeze? I just discovered this feature, the bug yesterday. So the timeline will be in 951, I think. I'll just show it here. Good question. And it's easy to customize anyway. because I showed last time in the SSO handling how to customize the fetch, the zk fetch command to handle the AJAX requests, and there you can do the error handling directly. You don't need to depend on the feature, and the error handling is easier than the redirect handling I showed there. You just need to check for an error code. So the workarounds are already possible. The configuration for this error handling should look like this. For AJAX errors, I would like to have the 403 redirect to the login. So if some AJAX request fails because the user is no longer logged in, he should be redirected in my case here. And there's the bug ID currently not working. I just open it for fun, and yeah, it's not fixed yet. It's completely new. It's already assigned to someone to work on it, so it's not forgotten. And so that's what we can see. There's a relation. We changed the AJAX to the fetch API, and somehow it behaves slightly differently, and then the error handling doesn't work completely. So it's here, it's posted, and I assume it doesn't get forgotten. And you should see it's created yesterday. So timeline is 951. So we go back to here. So just to mention, another question: will this work with the ZKCE version? I think yeah. Spring Security is independent of ZK's version. You need the Spring Boot package for this example. What you won't have are the ZK Max features I'm using here. I think the ZK Spring features I'm using here are not available in ZKCE, but otherwise the information is available, and I don't see why Spring Security should not work with ZKCE. It's just having a few less convenient features. Yes, so we have our internal login config. So what we saw is we handle our ZKAU. I just demonstrate what happens if you don't do this. Now, so you're not surprised when you see this the first time. I just disable my error handler for the AJAX requests. Restart my server. And then we go back to our page. I just reload. Okay, come on. Load. And now if some AJAX request gets blocked, it will be redirected to the login page, and then the JSON parser has an infinite loop of trying to parse the JSON response, because a redirect is by default not detected at client side in the AJAX thing, and in the AJAX engine, and then it will just run forever. So I would also say this is a bug that this runs forever, but it's easily avoidable, because when you see this kind of thing, then something dramatically goes wrong that needs to be fixed anyway. Now, so it will just count up. So if you need a counter, you can implement it like this. And it will continue. You can't get rid of it. You just have to reload, and then it's back to normal. So ideally, don't redirect AJAX to the login form. Just send a forbidden. Yes. Or you can apply the workaround we discussed last time in the single sign-on handling. Okay, time is close, so we just look at the external login config, which I think has a few benefits, and I would recommend this if you have a chance to use some kind of single sign-on solution, so you don't have to implement the login at all. You just deal with the APIs that are hopefully designed to be safe and help you avoid common mistakes, because I think no one of us is a perfect security expert, so we all overlook something, and that's where you can reduce the attack surface. A single sign-on solution, Google login, Facebook login, GitHub login, some OpenID Connect provider, CAS. I wanted to demonstrate CAS today, but then I figured out it's just too much, and right now the APIs don't work because they're in the middle of transitioning. So reuse an existing login mechanism is much easier with an external login page. You have slightly less complexity in your application. You can protect the whole application. You don't need to put too many exceptions. You just protect everything. Only very few exceptions, as mentioned. You have a few challenges. We have external dependencies that may fail. The login server may be offline. There may be network issues and or whatever. There may be licensing issues, or someone tries to charge you suddenly for the service. If Google decides they want to charge for the single sign-on, everyone is on the hook. Huh? Cross origin is always annoying. Not sometimes, I should say always. But it's just another topic you have to deal with if you have requests that go between different server names. You still have redirection challenges because you need to redirect also to an external login page. And you can't use the ZK layout, so you have to maybe duplicate some styles on the other server. You will see how this looks in my test case. What I did is I just provided external login HTML page here. Same thing, input type, username, password, and I have these submit and reset button and my quick logins that will just fill in the fields and submit the form directly. I just need to run this server, but I first demonstrate what happens if it's not. Okay, go through the configuration first, and then we see what happens. Somehow this configuration doesn't look simpler, but I think it is simpler in a few aspects. So what I do is I still say, because I'm Spring Boot, I deny all my direct Zool file access. I allow my remove desktop because that's something I just wanted to put here so you know how to deal with memory leaks. And if you just invalidate the session directly when a login or logout happens, then all the desktops are cleaned anyway. So then you can also avoid remove this. Now I have the same permission levels of the different pages, and everything else needs to be authenticated. The difference now is I have an external login page that is on a different port name in my case, different server, could be anywhere. I still have the default processing, the login processing URL of Spring Security, and for logout, I also use the internal logout. And in case of successful logout, I just go to here. Often you see that you can, for example, pass a parameter here, logout, to tell the other server to kill the single sign-on session. So there could be a different URL just to output some kind of message there, but I didn't care here. I just want to go back to login because the whole application is protected. And then I have the same error handling for ZKCE requests. Okay, we switch our profile to the external login, stop the other server, start it, and then see how this one is working. How much time? 15 minutes. Okay, that's good enough. We just go quickly because now the application is exactly the same, and then we can cover some more specifics. The difference is I don't allow the root or URL anymore because I want my application to be completely sealed off from any entry points. So you see it's redirecting me to my login page. In this case, I just demonstrated what happens when the server is gone. Yeah, you don't have a login. And that can be easily fixed. We just start it. In my case, I just have this HTML page, and I will quickly serve it via an npm serve, an npm HTTP server on port 3000. Now just go into the folder that contains this file and serve every file there. Just a very easy way to serve some files locally on your local host. I quite like these Node.js features, and I have the run command in the how to say, I have the run command in the notes later. So now we have an even uglier login page because it can't access any ZK styles. And it would just be denied, and I need to log in here. But it could be any server. Just log in, and then I will redirect to my, or the login will be posted to my other server. So if we check, this login form will post to my port 8080 login endpoint of my application. In case of a single sign-on, there will be another redirect step in between. So it will first log in at the single sign-on server, and then it will redirect back to your application to some kinds of response URL with a security ticket, and then the server will use the ticket to get an access token from the single sign-on server in the background to be not visible via the client side. So what we log in as, we use the quick login button as Hawk. We are redirected to our page. I can still see I'm Hawk. I have my user role. I cannot access the super user page. I can use my AJAX stuff. I can use my ServerPush, but I will see it still doesn't work. Does it? Granted authorities from ServerPush null. And we still have null authentication from ServerPush. Just try again. Did I? Yeah, it's doing nothing else. Okay. So same behavior. Also, if I'm, for example, one interesting thing is if you log out on a different page, that's the thing that can happen on single sign-on servers. You just log out in a new site. So now I'm logged out, but I still have my page. So if I try to do AJAX, it will send the forbidden request. And if the error handling would work, it would redirect me to the login page. It just doesn't do it right now. Okay, just log in again as Matt. I'll just test if we have more roles. We can see a super user, but we can't see the admin page. Okay. So now I'll make this a bit, now I think, yeah, we have now the external login page. So it's, for me, a bit cleaner because the external login page can in no way be hacked right now. It's just a static HTML page. It doesn't have any code. I think it can't be easier than this. And if you have to style such a simple page, it's maybe making it easier or not, maybe not too complicated to make it look nice. And also you can reuse it on different places maybe. So what else do we have? Yes, Spring security features. So what we do is we have a package, zk-springsecurity, that makes integration a bit more convenient. We already saw we can see all the roles in the different objects, but in the server push request it's just not there automatically. And this is what this package will fix. If you add this to your dependencies, it will load one jar file. I think 2 jar files. Here it will add the Spring core and the Spring security, which is, I always forget, I think it's only available in EE. Don't want messages right now. Yeah, just stop and restart the server. And then there's some magic happening that makes things work. 0 warnings, just reload and reload. Now this will get rid of the ugly expressions in our page that go directly into Spring specific or servlet specific objects, and will make things a bit nicer. So we log in again as, let's log in as Gene today. Okay, and now we can still use our AJAX, and now our server push should also work magically. So now you see inside my server push request, suddenly the security context is available. And now all the service calls you do to your Spring services will be able to do also the same kind of we'll be able to use the protection mechanism provided by Spring, the method security. And just a quick look at how the server push is done here. I think it's the simplest one I implemented so far. All I do is I create this thread, wait for 3 seconds, activate the execution, and output the current Spring context. So now it's available. Spring automatically adds this. This is done by a filter. I think it's called. I forgot. Forgot the name of it, but it's here in the ZK Spring. Where's Spring? Here, Spring Security. Just go into the package. There is the Java code and security init. Here it's the security context aware execution listener, just to follow the tradition of long names for Spring objects. And this one will check if a current execution has a Spring context already set, and if not, it will find the one from the current session. Where's the session? Here, load security context, and it will try to find it in the current session with the default attribute provided by Spring. And then it can put it into the current execution, and then your code is protected in this way. Or then you have the information available in this class, recovered from the session. Otherwise, you have to copy this have to use this code here to initialize this, and it doesn't need to be done twice. So we have this for convenience. But it's all based on Spring, and Spring is open source, so this code is not a secret. So what else do we have? Which other features in our Spring security page? Just show the obvious things. We have a variable resolver, which will add a new variable to the current page. So instead of using execution principal authenticated, you can now just use the authentication object. It's a bit nicer to work with. And this one will contain I think the Spring context. Let me just check what it is. If we go to our Spring security features page, we should see that's the remote user. So we have the same principal object here available as this variable directly. Or in Java, we can use the security util get authentication to get the same information. Now, as simple as this, it just adds this one variable that's available, authentication.name. I could say I only want to output the name, and then we don't see so much garbage here. We just see the username, Gene. Yeah, it would make this one here a bit easier. Not massively, but it's maybe convenient sometimes. And also this one is available in AJAX and non-AJAX requests, and also during WebSockets, because during WebSockets you don't have the user principal because this is not a real servlet request, and then things are changing slightly. So this one is more easily available. And the second feature of Spring Security is the tag lib. I just load the tag lib functions with the prefix sec. You can specify any prefix, but I use security sec. And then I have these function is all granted, is any granted, is none granted, to just enable certain links. For example, here I just render these links not dynamically, but I make a dynamic decision to render this link statically or not. Yeah, because normally your user roles don't change, so you don't need to make this decision dynamically. If you use MVVM, you could make this dynamic, but it's overkill, I think. So if I'm logged in as Gene, I have all the pages available. If I log out and log in as Hawk, for example, I have less pages available. So some of the links are hidden. So it's a very easy way to decide what to render in the UI using these functions, tag lib functions. Yeah, I think that's that's why I said it's not much in the Spring Security package, because most of the other stuff has been removed since version 4, because it was, as far as I know, never used and was just cluttering the code. Well, that's why we removed some of the strange features that also didn't port well to Spring 4, and was more important to upgrade than have all the features no one uses. Okay, now we can show the authentication from ServerPush here as well. So we should see our current user. What we can do now is enable, just to skip to a different topic, you can enable WebSockets. And this will replace, I think most of you know this already, it will replace the ZKAU requests and the commit requests with a single WebSocket. So for this, I already set the filter to show me the WebSocket requests. I'll need to restart the server. Oh, time's up. I think I'll leave it to you to test what happens if you don't use Spring Security with WebSockets. And here you see is the WebSocket message channel. And I can also do my tests now. I can test something from ServerPush. And after 3 seconds, I get my roles. And if I go to the main page, also the other things will or should still work. I show the user principal. No, this one doesn't work, huh? Because this is the difference between the HTTP request and the servlet request, that the execution user principal is not set here in this case. So a few things are not here. So use the authentication object provided by Spring, by zk-springsecurity, and then you don't have this issue. So AU test Spring admin page. Okay. I just check my notes if I forgot something. Otherwise, it's almost a perfect landing on the time. So we have the AJAX. So what I mentioned is that we avoid the 403. Instead we detect the 30. Oh, this is a bit ugly. Why does this format not? I'll go to the source code. Here, the idea is, okay. Don't use the arrows. Yeah, we already mentioned for AJAX handling, it's preferred to use an error code instead of a redirect for the ZKAU, and otherwise customize the ZAU fetch method. And for WebSockets and ServerPush, we can add the Spring Security extension, and then we have for these non-HTTP executions, I mean, these are the WebSocket and the ServerPush executions that will otherwise fail. And then we have the security context from Spring available under these contexts. I also added a JUnit test, can't cover it right now, which will just also go through in this case, it will test the internal login. Just quickly show it so you see that that there is something, the internal login test. Just show a few things, how to activate a profile. Maybe there's a better way to activate a profile, but you can do it with a system property. It's just a class I created to set a system property before and after the test class, and then Zats will run the internal Jetty with this system property, and Spring will activate the profile. Or you can do this in the web XML of your test web app file. Yeah, it's possible to also do this as a context parameter and activate profiles for the test run. And otherwise, this is a normal, a standard Zats test. No, not standard. Has a few more features because it also does the authentication by direct URL connections in a reusable way, so you can check for redirects and then follow the redirect manually, and like for example here, and then simulate what the browser is doing in order to test the steps through your login. Okay. I see no more questions. I didn't leave any time for questions, and so I'm quite sorry, but I think I'm at the end of this. As always, I will share this code. You will receive the code later in the recording. If there are any urgent questions, or maybe everyone fell asleep, then I would say I'm almost done. No, I'm done. I don't have anything else to show today. There's one thing I forgot, which would make the configuration a bit more simple. It's we have a new feature in ZK 9.5 also that splits the ZKAU servlet into the static resources and the AJAX part. I just mentioned this so I don't forget the link. Just log in as myself, and we just say split ZKAU. So this one is a new feature just added in 9.5.0, and there is the resource. It's called the ZK Resource Engine. It's a new servlet that allows you to configure the static resources to a different servlet mapping, and then it's a bit easier to select what to protect and what not to protect if you choose the internal approach. All right, then I would say I will stop the recording. Thanks I hope for your attention. And I will see you next time. And I'll stay online for a while just to see if there are any questions that didn't make it